Hello, 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 and welcome. My name is LaJoy Royston, and I'm the program director for Trey Athletes. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. You are joining us for our Fireside Chat with Carla Rosenberg and Desiree Powell, moderated by my colleague Brian Reynolds on mentors and community responsibility of athletes. Following this moderated discussion, we will have a live Q&A session, so we urge all of our participants to make sure that you submit your questions using the Q&A function. If you'd like, we'll offer the opportunity for you to come on camera and ask your question live to our panelists. For all of our season 3 participants, don't forget your team can win a pizza party. Just a few more weeks are left in season 3, so make sure you are engaging with us on social media. You can find us on Instagram and also Twitter at Trey Athletes. Your team could be next. Make sure to check us out on Instagram for additional rules on how you could win. Tonight's chat is presented by Trey Athletes. We are a Dallas-based youth sports nonprofit, and our mission is to empower athletes to be leaders, role models, and influential voices for their communities. We believe that by providing high school athletes with the opportunity to learn from amazing speakers, they will be provided necessary insight that can help ensure their success on and off the court or field. I'll be back at the end of the conversation to share a few reminders. I hope you all enjoyed this amazing conversation. Brian, it's on you.
Thank you so much, LaJoy, and welcome everyone. I'm Brian Reynolds, co-founder and co-CEO of Trey Athletes. Tonight, for our conversation regarding mentors and the community responsibility of athletes, we are incredibly fortunate to be joined by two former college athletes who are doing impactful work in our community. Carla Rosenberg of Sport5 Global Sports Marketing Agency and Desiree Powell of Black Spaces, a Dallas-based urban planning and design firm. First up is our good friend, South African native and former college tennis player, Carla Rosenberg. Carla currently works as the Senior Vice President of Charity and Events Management for the global sports marketing agency, Sport5. In addition to running countless events, Carla and her team provide philanthropic advice to many of Sport5's more than 250 athlete clients who are looking to build or enhance their charitable activities and foundations. Carla also currently serves as president of the Dallas Influencers in Sports and Entertainment, or DICE, and she serves on a number of charitable boards, including the Nancy Lieberman Charities. Prior to her current work at Sport5, Carla worked in professional sports for 8 years with both the Texas Rangers and the Dallas Stars in advance of founding her own agency called Matchpoint, and later joining forces with Lagardère Plus. Born and raised in South Africa, Carla holds a Bachelor of Science in kinesiology from the University of Illinois, where she played 4 years on the tennis team. At Illinois, Carla graduated with highest honors as well as academic All-American and all Big Ten accolades. She also received her MBA in marketing/sports and entertainment management from the University of Dallas. Welcome, Carla.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Pleasure is ours, my friend. Next up is Dallas native and former college basketball player, Desiree Powell. Desiree is an urban planner and designer based right here in DFW. She focuses on placemaking, creating sustainable spaces for growth, and curating community engagement projects in communities of color. Desiree's passion in urban planning is simple. To do right is to practice with heart and dedication to a community, nothing more, nothing less. She finds her biggest inspiration in hip hop music, streetwear, and sports. And it's what makes her approach to urban planning a bit unique, because Desiree aims to connect those components to urban planning in a way that breaks down the hierarchy through language, interaction, and trust. Desiree has worked with cities across North Texas, including Arlington, Benbrook, Lancaster, and Grand Prairie, just to name a few. Desiree holds a Bachelor's of Interdisciplinary Studies and a Master's of City and Regional Planning from the University of Texas at Arlington, where she developed her true passion for community development and urban design. Welcome, Desiree.
Thank you for having me. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. So for those of you watching and listening at home tonight or on our recording thereafter, we're going to be talking about the power and the importance of mentors and role models, as well as the outsized impact that athletes can have on their communities. To kick things off, this first question is for both of you. And let's start with Desiree before kicking it over to Carla. Tell us about yourself by answering these two questions. Number one, where are you from? And number two, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I'm from Arlington, Texas, which is about 20 minutes away from Dallas. Mostly born and raised. And then when I wanted to grow up, I wanted to be, as cliche as it sounds, a professional basketball player or a dentist. I don't know.
Whoa, back that up. So that's a nice balance you got going on there, Desiree. How did you decide between dentist, professional basketball player, and then inevitably coming back around to urban design and planning?
I really liked my dentist. He was much nicer than my doctor. So I was like, this seems like a cool job. And he had like arcade games at his dentist's office. So I thought that was cool. And then I realized that you have to like go in people's mouths every day. And I was like, maybe dentist isn't really for me.
I love that. I also, I think that that's kind of tied in some ways to some of the things we're going to talk about today as it relates to really the power of mentors and role models, right? Like looking up to somebody for what they provide to their local community. So thank you for sharing. Sure. Carla, tell us about you. Where'd you grow up and what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Well, as you mentioned, I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, which is about 20 hours plane ride. And now based in Dallas. So, and when I was younger, what I wanted to do was win Wimbledon and serve in volley there. Later on, just like you said, you maybe wanted to be a dentist. I also wanted to kind of find a cure for a disease and be able to help others. So I did not get my PhD, nor did I win Wimbledon, in case you're wondering.
I think the big question is, did you get a chance to go to Wimbledon and eat strawberries and cream at some point in time?
I sure did. Yes.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Back when Andy Roddick and Roger Federer played in the final. So quite a while ago, but that was a very big memory for me and fun to be at.
That is so awesome. I actually met Dirk Nowitzki on Wimbledon grounds in Dallas, on the 4th of July. He's wandering around and like no one even knew who he was. It was the coolest experience of all time. So, sticking with you, Carla, here for just a second. Talk to us a little bit about your career path to date. Kind of walk us through that. I gave kind of a brief overview at the top, but would love to hear the details from you. And then also, if you can, kind of in simple terms for our high school athletes at home, tell us about your current job responsibilities.
Sure. So like I said, I wanted to be able to win Wimbledon and I wanted to be able to give back. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. I just thought there was one way to do it. You become a professional athlete and you get a PhD and you help cure diseases or something like that. While I never quite did that, the path that I chose kind of led me there in an interesting way. Essentially, what I do now is I help professional athletes with running their foundations in terms of setting them up or helping them with their programming and executing their charity events. I started my career as an intern working at the Texas Rangers and then at the Dallas Stars. And then subsequently, my first full-time job was at the Texas Rangers and then the Dallas Stars. So it kind of worked out, that whole internship experience. And when I was at the Dallas Stars, I really kind of found my lane in terms of working in community relations, working for the Dallas Stars Foundation. Really enjoyed that give back component that I referenced in professional sports. And then after working about 7 seasons on the professional sports team side, I wanted to see what it was like working in an agency. I worked at 2 other agencies before starting my own, as you alluded to, in 2012 called Matchpoint. And because that's the only point that matters in tennis, for those of you who don't play tennis. So that's why the name of the company was Matchpoint. And essentially in 2018, I got acquired by Lagardère Global Sports Marketing Agency. And during COVID last year, we rebranded to Sport5, probably easier to pronounce and spell. And essentially, as I mentioned, you know, my day-to-day is helping different athletes in a variety of different sports. Some of them who need to start their foundations from scratch. Some of them already have an established foundation and looking to build out programming and execute high-profile charitable events. And then others have like their mother or their ex-girlfriend or an aunt or a cousin running their foundation and then want to take it to another level. And so they come to us and we help them. But there's really two sides of what we do. It's the nonprofit advisory, what we call it, the foundation management side of it. And then there's the event side, where we executing their charity events, from galas to golf tournaments to tennis tournaments to private intimate dinners with sponsors. You name it, we've probably done it at this point, but it's very dynamic on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis.
And quick follow-up question for you there, Carla. So when most people think event planning and event management, they're like, I would love to go to parties all the time. But as someone who has seen you in action, I know just how much detail and rigor goes into your job. Can you talk to us a little bit about, the job side of event management?
Sure. So the majority of our events are high profile. So there's a certain caliber and expectation. And 9 times out of 10, they're covered in the media. So again, from an appearance standpoint, it has to be executed at that level. And then we're dealing with celebrities, professional athletes, and they have an expectation too. So from a baseline standpoint, every little detail matters. And there are so many components that are involved. One of the things, and it was funny because we've just started our internship program this summer, and they all go, oh my gosh, we have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. We just see the end result and it looks so fun, but all the grinding and the, day-to-day, and the strategy and the design work that has to go into it and the production pieces and all the meetings that have to happen and the site visits, there's a lot of components. But the biggest thing that I say, what we do that differs from a lot of event planners is because we're dealing with charity events, there's a transactional component. And what I mean by that is we're taking in money, whether it's a sponsorship or a ticketed event, or people are bidding in auctions, whether it's a silent auction, a live auction, a raffle. We have to provide the tax receipts and the follow-up and make sure it's all 501c3 compliant. So, I mentioned we work primarily with professional athletes foundations, but we execute events for professional athletes, for sports teams, for brands, and then also a lot of like cause marketing campaigns. So it's not just strictly the athletes that we manage. There's a variety of other events that we do under this umbrella, and they all have that strategic component. And at the end of the day, the charity has to realize a profit. So you have to kind of execute this, make sure it looks good, and that the production value is high, that the guests are having a good experience, that you're activating on the sponsors. There's a million different things. But again, at the end of the day, we get judged on also that the charity realizes a profit.
Super impressive. And I like how you snuck in a nice little tennis pun there at the start. You said to set the baseline. I mean,
yeah.
all night.
Did not mean that, but.
So Desiree, shifting attention over to you, talk to us about your career, walk us through kind of where you've been, and also talk to us about your current work and kind of in simple terms, your job responsibilities today.
Yeah, for sure. So I started in Parks and Recreation in the city of Arlington as a part-time employee, just working there while I was going to grad school at UTA or UT Arlington. I had just moved back here from being in Killeen. I also worked for the Parks and Rec department there. And I think I was turning 24, 25. So I was just kind of working, just passing the time while I was in grad school, not really knowing what was going to come after grad school. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm from Arlington, but I never went to any camps in Arlington, and I never wanted to do summer camp when I was a teenager. I just didn't see myself wanting to hang out with kids all day. Oddly enough, when I got to Parks and Rec, that's pretty much all I did all day. Originally, I started out as just a CSR, customer service representative, really just sign people up for classes, rentals if people wanted to use some of our rooms, weight room. And my boss at the time, one day was just you seem like you like kids. I was like, I don't know how you get that vibe. I don't talk a whole lot, keep to myself, so I don't really know how you get that vibe. But she asked me to do spring break camp. And I was super nervous because, You get 12 kids at the most. And that was my first time like being responsible for that many kids at once. And I was just kind of like freaking out a little bit. And she's like, you'll be fine. I was like, I have no idea about anything. Like if they're allergic to something, if they anything that could possibly happen, I felt like could have happened. After that, it kind of took off. Like I loved every minute of being with the kids. The kids grew, I grew. And the kids helped me like really finish my master's program. All my projects were geared off of that recreation center and where it's located and its proximity and all of its demographics as far as being extremely multicultural, Black, Hispanic, Vietnamese, Arabic, and then the numerous amounts of languages that are spoken at the rec. So a lot of my projects on community development and community engagement in my master's program came from Houston Recreation Center. People always ask how I came up with the idea, and I was like, I didn't really. Like my 8 or 9 year olds ask me about what I do, and the more I think about how to break it down, they've made it easier to like say that line over the last couple of years. From there, I like any person when they get their when they finish with graduate school, kind of trying to figure out what's next. Unfortunately, cool planning jobs just don't jump out at you. They all have this very, I guess, boring aspect to it when you first start out. So similar to Carla, I started out as an intern in the city of Benbrook, super small city, didn't really know a whole lot about it. But I learned a lot because they only have like 4 people in their planning department. And then I went to the city of Lancaster, which was like my first, I guess, real planning job. That's where I discovered that I loved places and spaces. And I think I knew that when I was in Arlington because I loved being outside. I loved the outdoors. And I loved when the kids were able to go to different places and feel different things. When we went to different parts of Arlington or different cities, some of our kids had never went out of Arlington. So we went to the Dallas Zoo and they loved it. Even if we only got to see like 4 animals, they still loved just like the bus ride. And I'm just like sick having a ride on the bus for 35 minutes with 48 and 9 year olds. But that type of experience and the way it like it lit them up going to those different things in those different places. And, we're all in the same Metroplex. At that time, I realized that I really loved spaces and places and being able to like curate them in a way that people wanted to keep coming back. My friends joke all the time that I'm the least likely person to want to do that because I'm like a very much so stand on the wall kind of person when I go anywhere. When we go out anywhere, I'm just like standoffish. So it's very odd that this is what life ended up being like. From there, I kind of tapped into that. Being stuck in the house all of last year really helped figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And like Carla mentioned, how I wanted to make an impact and kind of be on the give back side, but I wanted to do that more often than not. My job can be pretty boring, but being able to find a lot of the fun and the joy in it is really what keeps it exciting. For the most part, keeping it really simple. Urban planning is really the way we shape cities, communities, how they look, how they function, how they act, and the built environment. So potholes, water utilities, highways, all of those things are at the fault of your local city planning department for the most part. But on the flip side, we also do cool things as far as like spaces and places. Even to the point, I have some colleagues that are doing like transit planning with the speed rail that are supposed to take you from here to Houston in like 45 minutes. So it's a lot of cool lanes in planning. And I think the part that I love so much about it is because it's so broad. Most of my friends and classmates and colleagues came from like anthropology, sociology, engineering, biomedical engineering, architecture. Like we all have these crazy backgrounds that you never would have thought we'd be public planners or private planners. So yeah, that's pretty much what urban planning is. And now I'm kind of carving out my own lane and focusing those things on spaces and places, typically outdoors.
Well, Desiree, your background is super impressive. And I think that one of the things that I see that connects both you and Carla, not only history in Arlington from the sound of it, but also being creators, being founders of your own projects, of your own companies. And it's just incredibly impressive to see what both of you all have done. So for this next question, we're going to segue a little bit. And I'm going to start off with Desiree. So actually, before we dig in, I want to share a real quick statistic with you all that we frequently cite this work or in our work at Trey Athletes, I should say. So did you know 73% of kids today look up to and emulate an athlete as one of their primary role models, which is second only to their parents? Athletes are really powerful community figures, starting off as young as middle school or high school. And the younger generation is always watching the athletes above them, mimicking their every move, both on and off the court or field, because they often want to be just like them. So we talk about how it's our responsibility as athletes to give back to our communities and to help positively guide younger kids as best we can. We heard that come through in both of your stories, I think, which is really, really incredible. So all that is to say, Desiree, who were your role models and mentors as a kid?
Allen Iverson, easily. I think I spent way too many hours in the driveway. Before we had a goal, before we had like an actual driveway, I spent way too many hours trying to mimic his every move. And my dad would just be like, "You're not ready. You're not strong enough yet. You're not there yet." That was probably my early one. And there was someone like you just mentioned, someone on an older team. I've always played in an older age bracket, but she always like gave me the hardest time every practice, every single thing, everything. It was just like a never good enough situation, only to find out that she was really making me better. But definitely Allen Iverson when I was a kid.
I love that because AI, I mean, the answer, right? His crossover was incredible. He was so undersized compared to everyone else out there on the court. And yet he like had this swagger and this toughness that exceeded anyone. I love him. And he's got great shoes too. So Carla, shifting back to you, talk to us about who your role models and mentors were as a kid.
Sure. As a kid, my role model was my tennis coach, actually. Not only was to me, he like such a delightful tennis coach, but he just taught me so many lessons off the court. So it was things like discipline and a work ethic and how to set goals. And he showed me how to give back. Sometimes you're not aware of it until somebody kind of shows you. And I remember a lot of amazing lessons that he taught me back then. Subsequently now, 25 years later, more than that, 29 years later, we're still very connected. I just spoke to him this weekend. Now our conversations are different. It's more about what's going on in your life, any business projects that you're working on that you want to chat, any kind of vision you have for the future. So he's been a role model. He was my coach. That when I started looking back, he was definitely influential in my development as a young person. And he's still in my life as someone that I really know I can call upon and just talk through things, good, bad, and different. That's, to me, he was, when I was a kid, a role model. I had never thought of an athlete. And when you responded, I did have a favorite athlete. And it was Steffi Graf. I don't even know if anybody, she's married to Andre Agassi. And I wanted that slice backhand so badly. And I had her posters all over my wall. And, I deal with athletes on a regular basis. So it's not, often that I would get starstruck. But when I met Steffi Graf, I now knew what that felt like. All I wanted to tell her was, I had your posters on my wall. I'm like, that's going to sound so creepy. But I just thought she was just such a class act, the way she carried herself. And I just loved the way she played. And I wanted to be like Steffi, and I wore her clothes, whatever outfits she had. I wanted to wear those on the tennis court. So if I had an athlete that I aspired to be like, it was definitely Steffi Graf.
You and I are, we have some shared history there, Carla, because I shared with you on our prep call that Andre Agassi is my favorite athlete of all time. For anyone who joined our Trey Athletes Season 3 kickoff event, I actually showed my brother and I grew out mullets when we were in elementary school so we could be like Andre Agassi. Like the obsession was real. Fast forwarding a little bit to today, both of you have obviously continued to really grow in your careers personally, interpersonally, and professionally. Talk to us a little bit about what you look for in a role model today. Carla, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, I'll piggyback off about what you just said with Andre Agassi, funny enough. So as an adult now, I've probably established 3 more mentors in my life that, that I consider mentors. And it's not kind of a conversation that you have and you go, hey, you're my mentor. It just happened organically. But the first was my first boss at the Texas Rangers, Jeff Cogan. He was somebody who put me in environments that as a young 20-year-old probably was not equipped or could provide any expertise, but I was a sponge and I was going to grad school and I was trying to soak it all in. And he allowed me to sit in meetings and kind of learn from him. And I tried to just, like I said, absorb everything I could, see how he interacted with different executives, how he ran the business. I was fortunate, he was the president of the team. So I got to see a lot of behind the scenes and get to ask him questions. He was very open to me learning and teaching. So he was a great mentor to me and, still in touch with him today. And then the Andre Agassi, so the gentleman that runs the Agassi Foundation, Steve Miller, he's a mentor to me. And I met him when I was also in my early 20s and I was actually out in LA and someone said, you need to meet this guy. He runs Nike, he ran the Nike tennis, and he now runs some tennis foundation. And that's actually how I ended up meeting Steffi Graf, was through this. But Steve, kind of took me under his wing and he took me to these big charitable events where there were A-list celebrities. And I got to see it at a young age before I was doing events of that caliber. And for me to recognize and see, oh, that is what I want to do. Oh my gosh, that's what goes into it. And it's like everything in life, right? When you see somebody like you doing something, or sometimes you need to see it to know that you can do it. That's what happened then and there. So whether he knew it or not, he was exposing me to an environment that I was going to later on in life get to play in that sandpit, but without realizing it then. It excited me to be able to see what was involved, and he was able to share with me how to run a big time foundation and what kind of goes into all of that and how to set up endowments. And I learned a lot from him. And I don't think it was intentional on his part. He was just being really kind. And again, it's always so open to when I want to chat with him about things. And then, lastly would be my current boss now. He recognized, Curran Egan is the president of Sport 5. He recognized that our agency had a service offering that he thought could fit within the greater agency environment. I'm forever grateful for that. And then the fact that he continues to kind of not only encourage and support the work that we do, but challenge us in a very positive way to kind of stay being leaders and advance with technology and adapt with the times. And I feel very grateful that I have a boss that's forward thinking, that's, kind of supports what we do. And our team, and is all female, and that he's very encouraging of women in the workplace where we're in a predominantly male environment. So I'm very grateful for the folks that I've gotten to learn from. And again, I said it all happened organically. You just kind of start looking back and going, wow, these are people that are having a thumbprint, an effect on my life in a profound way. And I'm benefiting it from their presence in my life and from what they're showing me and exposing and teaching. And hence I call them mentors to me.
I love that. And just to kind of bring together a couple of the things that you said too, it sounds like someone who challenges you, someone who is going to give you opportunity to learn and grow, and someone who really sort of helps you grow in a way that you might not have ever had the opportunity to do so otherwise, and open new doors and opportunities. So Same question, Desiree, shifting to you. Would love to hear, who are your mentors and role models today and why?
So role models, oddly enough, one of them I've never met ever, and it seems silly to be this age and still have like a celebrity or artist role model, but it's was Nipsey Hussle. Even what he's put into place now, very much so the organic give back, the organic idea of just self-educating, but also passing it on to other people, kind of like making sure that everybody has access to whatever information and resources they need. That's been a pretty huge guiding light as far as Black spaces and just the atmosphere of creating spaces. Like Carla mentioned, previous bosses, oddly enough, as I mentioned with Arlington, my first boss in like a local government setting was Heather Taylor. She hired me. I had experience in Killeen, but it was a totally different city, totally different capacity, obviously smaller than Arlington. When she took a chance to like let me try summer camp, let me try some of these other programs, things that people said that wouldn't work at our rec center because of where it was located, and the demographics of our surrounding neighborhoods. She always like, if it doesn't work, we didn't lose any money. We're using our center. If it does work, it's really cool and we can say we did it first. She was always extremely encouraging, always going to bat for me and my other coworkers at the time, as far as making sure that we're trying to reach whatever goals that was at the time. And then when I was in the city of Lancaster, I was very fortunate to have two Black female bosses, a city manager and a deputy city manager. You don't see that very often in the same setting, in the same city. They were both like two extra moms. And some days I'd be like, man, you guys ever just feel like you're just being real mommy? They're like, yeah, I do. It definitely made me feel like I had moms at work. When I left work, I always felt like somebody was watching. They were at a point in my life where I was transitioning in my career as far as kind of like growing out of this. I don't want to be a paper pusher anymore. And I don't want to just like despise coming to work. Like other people, I want to like it here and I want to like what I do. And I want to like the people in this community and see how they interact with it. They sent me to my first state conference for planning and I was like miserable. The whole drive to Galveston, I was like, this is going to be the worst. I don't like going to conferences. I don't like interacting on a regular basis. And I was like, it's going to be 3 days of me having to like talk to people for the most part. But I came back and they were like, you liked it, didn't it? I was like, yeah, it was cool. It was different. Just having to be in that environment all the time. But they sent me and they were, confident enough that I was going to come back and not hate life and not want to quit, but also very just encouraging in the sense of, even if they help me understand like the more professional side, because sometimes I'm just so ready to make change and not wanting to wait. And that's hard to do in local government. But really being able to show me those, if you can learn the back end of it and you can always fit it into a bigger picture, it's hard for people to say no. And if you get a no, it's really just changing their mind till it's a yes in a way that it benefits everybody. So they definitely played a big role in allowing me that space to grow and that space to think differently. And then last but not least, my current mentor is Dr. Ann Foss. She's actually a transportation planner in the city of Arlington. We had like this program through UTA as I was getting ready to graduate, or right after I graduated. And I wanted somebody close, somebody that I kind of sort of knew. She went to UTA like right before I started in my graduate program. And she is like the whole package for me, like planning wise. She worked on the private side in New York. And to us here, it's like, man, if you can do it in New York, you can do it anywhere probably. And then she got her PhD in planning and she's just extremely passionate about transportation planning. And she also kind of keeps me level-headed as far as like, did you think this all the way through? What are some pros and cons? I'm more of a just like, I see the pros, I'm just gonna worry about the cons at the end. But she's super helpful in helping me transition through not only my career, but also my personal life when it comes to, I struggle with the work-life balance. And she's really good about helping me figure out, okay, what's urgent and what's important. So definitely my top go-to people right now that if I ever have a question, I go to them about my career or about my personal life.
You just dropped a number of nuggets on us right there. The first one is the difference between what's urgent and what's important. That's totally separate from our conversation on mentorship and role models. But I love that. And I think that's really important to kind of raise to the surface. But what really jumped out at me was this idea of representation, right? That we oftentimes gravitate to someone who has a similar set of experiences that we do, or someone who we can relate to, or someone who looks like us, or whatever it might be, right? So seeing people who look like us accomplish the things that we want to accomplish helps really broaden our horizons and open our eyes to what's possible. We talk about it all the time at Trey. If you don't see it, then you can't be it, right? So I think that it's just really important to call out what you just said there, Desiree. And I think that here for this sort of like next set of questions or two. And by the way, we have time for probably another couple questions. Just a reminder to anyone watching at home, drop your Q&A into the chat. And if you're interested, you're more than welcome to come on live and ask a question to Carla and Desiree. So Carla, you actually prefaced this for me earlier. It's like we're synced up here. But this idea that no one just knows how to get involved in the community, right? Someone oftentimes shows us. And Desiree, I'm going to start off with you for this question. So, who helped show you how to get involved in the community? And then more specifically, what is it long-term that you accomplish through your work in both urban design and planning and with your organization, Black Spaces?
Oddly enough, or maybe cliche, my mom works for the city of Arlington, and she used to work in grants. So they would put together these events for like home ownership resources or home renovation programs. So we would do these things and we would get invited to like the big event at UTA. Like at the time, I didn't realize it was like a big deal until I got to UTA, and I was like, oh, this is like a thing. But those were things that she always had us in the community. When I didn't have games on Saturdays, we were probably at some community event. And it wasn't because like we were in trouble, like my sibling and I, or because we needed community service. This was like before, I'm probably predating myself a little bit, but before we needed hours for like anything for community service, we just kind of did it. And it allowed me to talk to people, and it helped me kind of separate from my mom a little bit for the most part. Early on at events, like we would just kind of be stuck to her. And then as we started getting more comfortable going to different ones, same kind of crowd, same people, we got more comfortable knowing these people, recognizing these people. I mean, some of these people I still like talk to now, as I think I was like 10 when we started doing that, and I'm about to be 30. So it's pretty phenomenal to still keep in touch with a lot of those people. So I would say definitely she got me into it. And then Heather really helped me exacerbate it. She showed me how to do it from a Parks and Rec side. And I never really saw it as possible. I just kind of thought like Parks and Rec puts on events and that's what they do. But she showed me how to do it in a way that was low cost. And if we didn't have a whole lot, we still, made a way to do something. She really stressed that to me. That was always her biggest thing of, even if we don't have it, we're gonna make a way to get involved with the kids, whether that's going to the schools if we don't have it, if we don't have enough flyers, whatever the case is, she always found a way. Long-term with myself in Black Spaces, I think it's always going to be about making sure the community is first, very much so community-centered. Whatever that looks like, it varies, obviously, wherever that community is. But I'm hopeful that it'll take me to different places and meet different people and get to interact with different spaces to see how people, how they enjoy them, how they interact with them. A big part of urban planning has always been designing for people instead of with people. So now for me, it's very much so, not necessarily what do you want, but you live in this particular place Monday through Sunday. I may only be here Friday through Sunday or for a couple of months at a time. What's the most beneficial thing that you have access to that's resourceful and that's actually beginning to make your quality of life a little bit better? So I think that's probably the long-term goal. Always finding the community first, channeling that inner community.
I love that because it's like human-centered design with a community focus. And this idea of, how spaces really affect us as individuals. I mean, we've all felt that here in the last year, right? Being cooped up in, solitary single spaces oftentimes. So hats off to you for the incredible work that you're doing, Desiree. Thank you so much. Carla, same question for you, which is, who helped sort of show you the light in terms of getting involved in the community? And more specifically, what is your goal or goals as it relates to the work that you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I think my tennis coach definitely exposed me to giving back. I also don't want to put aside my parents who've been very influential in my life. And I feel very fortunate to have an amazing family, because I know you don't get to pick those. So I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize them, because they obviously had a great influence in terms of giving back. But from when I kind of realized this is something that one should do, was through playing tennis. I wanted extra court time. And in order for me to play more, my coach kind of encouraged us to teach the younger kids. Or if I was injured, instead of not showing up for a week, to come out and teach the younger kids and give back to the program that has given you so much. He do it in a way that I never felt like it was a chore, but I actually felt proud. And it also forced me to kind of elevate myself as a person, because if I'm telling younger people to behave a certain way or conduct themselves or play or do something, then I had to do that as well. So being able to give back to the program that meant something to me was probably when I started realizing, oh, as a human, this is something one should do. And the irony is, everyone you ever speak to who volunteers or helps out or does something that is giving back, they feel so much better after the fact. And that's why when somebody's down in the dumps, you always say, do something for somebody else will make you feel better. And it really does. And I think, I learned those lessons early on. And, that's why I love what I get to do on a daily basis, because we get to see the impact in real time. And so all that hard work becomes worthwhile when you see 10 kids who've never been to college getting college scholarships, for instance. What I hope for myself in this space, I hope that we would be recognized as the go-to group for, if you're a professional athlete and you want someone to take your foundation to the next level, or if you want to execute a charity event, that we're the first people that you think about. It used to be my goal just to have that be in Dallas, that we were the go-to people. That's now, I want that nationally. And maybe, if I'm still kicking in 10 years, maybe internationally, but I definitely don't just want to be that go-to person in Dallas, but wherever, an athlete is looking to do something where they want to give back, or they thinking of starting a charity, or they, whether an organization is looking to create a new fundraising event, that they come to us and think of us as a resource to them to be able to do that.
That's phenomenal. Both of you are doing such impactful work, and you are affecting such positive community change through really different and in some ways kind of intertwined channels. It's incredible to see. And I think that this last question I have for the two of you, in advance of kind of turning it over to a couple audience questions, is, Carla, I'll start with you. What tips do you have for the athletes who are watching and listening at home, who are in high school, to start learning about this process, to really begin affecting positive community change?
Well, you have a platform, whether you realize it or not. And just because you might look up to LeBron James, there's someone sitting next to you in your class that thinks you're their LeBron James, right? So what I will say is everything sends a signal, verbal and non-verbal. So what you post, what you say, what you do, the power of adjacency, who you align yourself with, I always say is very important, especially, when you're a young athlete. No one's perfect. So, be real. I mean, share your story so people can relate to you, the same way how Brian had us do that when we came on, right? But, the same thing when I say to, when you post something on social media, and I use that as an example, would your parents, your boss, your grandparents be okay seeing it? Well, it's the same thing in how you conduct your life. If you have those things in the back of your mind, I think that's going to be valuable going forward, because There are people always looking up to you. And I think you just want to be mindful and treat everyone, the way you'd like to be treated, regardless of who they are. You never know where they're going to end up. So that's kind of my, I don't know, 5 cents words of wisdom.
Worth way more than a nickel, I can tell you that much. So Desiree, same question for you. What tips or advice would you have for high school athletes watching and listening at home regarding affecting positive community change?
It's like Carla mentioned, it's about who you are off the court. That person is as big as the person you are on the court. You don't want to be a star athlete and a terrible person, or uncoachable, or not a great teammate. And adjacency, really, like if you align yourself with other people, you know what they always say, talent beats hard work when hard work doesn't want to work, or something like that. But they do everything organically. I think this year and beginning of this year and last year, it's okay to be selfish about some things, like as far as your goals and what you want to accomplish. For me, in high school, it was all about winning state for the whole school, for the team, for everybody. And I never realized like how much I missed out on just like focusing so much on state and so much on, like, it was almost like tunnel vision. So it's okay to be selfish with your goals. Also being realistic about just doing everything organic, being transparent. There's somebody with the same story as you, same background. Even if it's completely opposite, they just see what you're doing and they see that you're genuine about it. They're gonna follow it, and they're gonna always want to tap in. So just being organic as possible, really.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're now going to move over to a few audience questions, and I have, off the bat, I have one for Desiree and one for Carla. So Desiree, first question for you is, talk to us about the name Black Spaces. We saw, let me make sure I get this right. So the question is like, is there significance to the A being left out of both Black and Spaces?
Funny story. Me and my best friend, like right before we had to like quarantine, we were sitting in her apartment talking about this, and I was like, I really like simple design, simple everything. And we were talking about what I wanted to do, and I was like, curate and create spaces and communities of color that we've never had before. And we were typing it out, and I was like, it just looks weird, it's too long. And she just dropped out the A's, and that's pretty much it. So it's not a super cool backstory as far as what we didn't, like I took out the A's. But the whole idea of Black Spaces was really, at the time, finding a voice in urban planning for planners of color, Black planners particularly, in the sense that so much planning happens in our communities, but you don't see too many Black planners that you can say, hey, I know that person. So that's where the whole Black Spaces idea came from. And then the A's are just, I guess, bad grammar.
That's epic. I'm going to keep that one with me for a minute. So Carla, this next question is for you, which is, as a woman in a male-dominated industry, what have been some challenges you've faced, and how do you mentor other women to deal with those challenges?
Question.
That's a great question, right? I have to be honest. It all comes with maturity and experience. Fortunately, I don't have any negative stories to report. So there's that. Look, I think a lot of it stems from, I've got 2 brothers, and, they both played sports, and growing up, I was always included. It was never like, Carla, you can't play that because you're a girl. And I was the biggest tomboy, and if I wanted to wear overalls, it was never like, you can't wear that, you're a girl. And I don't think my parents or my brothers realized that, but I was always included. And what's interesting is I many times find myself where I'm the only female in the room, and I never think I'm the, I never go, oh gosh, I'm the only woman in this room. Like, I feel like I have a place there. I've never felt uncomfortable. But I will say, as you get older, you recognize things in terms of your body language and how you present yourself and how you conduct yourself. And then it all sends the signal, right? And I think when you're younger and you're trying to be impressionable, I see a lot of young girls that are trying really hard to get the attention. And sometimes it comes across in the wrong way. But it all comes through time and confidence and experience. And, one of the things I always tell young women is be aware of your surroundings, how you conduct yourself. And again, it goes back to, how would your parents, your grandparents, your boss, your kids one day when they look back, seeing you, behave or respond. I think what's interesting with, sometimes with women, they can come across very harsh and they get named a bitch, or they can come across too giggly and flirty and they get named other names, and I think I always say, stay true to yourself, but just be aware of your body language, and kind of how you conduct yourself. And, it just, like I said, it comes with, time, experience, confidence. As you gain more knowledge, you feel more that you have more to contribute and add to the conversation. But when you're younger, just kind of soak it all in and, be poised and graceful and know that you always have a place at the table. Instead of wondering why you're the only female in the room, like that never crosses my mind. It's more like, what is the work that I need to do and what is the conversation about, versus focusing on those things, because that's not important. You can be the right woman for the job.
And you certainly are. So this next one is really interesting. I have not heard this question before. This comes from one of our Trey athletes who says, this is for both of you. Do you have a favorite quote or a life mantra that you live by?
That's tough. A favorite quote.
I'll jump in, Desiree. And it's something actually, I don't know. It's a golfing quote, but my parents say it and I say it. It's the harder I work, the luckier I get. The harder you work, the luckier you get. I always say there's no substitution for hard work. And it just seems like when I've prepared well and I work hard, good things typically happen. So that's kind of one of many.
I guess for me, it's not really, I guess it's a lyric and it's not really a quote from Nipsey Hussle, obviously. It's, I never gave up. None of this happened overnight. Not verbatim, but the gist of it is, I kept going with every no, every L, every time something didn't go the way that I thought it was gonna go. It just kept going. But like Carla mentioned earlier, it's the ground behind the scenes.
I'm gonna use this opportunity to shout out my mom, since we've got a couple of other mom shout outs going on here. My mom always told me growing up as a kid, you are who you hang with, and it was just like drilled into us, right? So I'm really lucky that I surround myself with wonderful people like you too. So this next question is super interesting, which is what have you seen, or what is the most powerful sort of instance that you've seen of like community giving back, whether that is a specific story or an athlete's tale that you might have, but something that was really powerful to you that you witnessed, that you just said, wow, this is incredible to affect this positive change?
I guess I can go on that one, go first. The group that I work with a lot, they're called the Better Block. One of the people that works for them is Krista Nightingale. Her husband, David, coaches lacrosse. It's called Bridge LAX, I think. And they won state, I think like 2 weekends ago. So he's like all of these kids that kids that are in neighborhood that you would have never have access to lacrosse. You would ever think like, why would you want to play lacrosse when you could just play basketball? But they play lacrosse, and seeing them win last year, like when we were doing the food park in South Dallas, he was also like alternating trying to go to practice. And while we were fighting with the weather, they were having an even more challenging time with the weather, trying to practice on wet fields and get everything together. And just hearing him on the like behind the scenes about how they're trying to get from point A to point B, shuttling kids around, picking kids up, dealing with COVID and getting them to like check in for school and everything like that. To see them win, to virtually see them win state via Twitter was phenomenal. It was like a bigger community of all of those kids are now in the process of getting scholarships to go play lacrosse in college. And maybe 4 years ago when they started high school, they would have never thought about A, playing lacrosse, and B, going to college, and C, going to college to play lacrosse. So that was pretty dope.
1000% agree. We are good friends and competitors with Better Block, which you already know, Desiree. We were in the United Way Social Innovation Accelerator. So Krista is a good friend of ours. Shout out David and Bridge Lacrosse, like you said, state champs, bring it home. And Jason as well, who's one of the founders. So thank you so much for all that you do, Better Block. Carla, what do you got for us?
I don't have one particular story. It's like, but I'll tell you what was very profound was during COVID and during lockdown. And I'm not big on social media, but I remember the first 2 months I would do every Saturday, I kind of did like a Instagram, like story live thing where I would share what different athletes around the country were doing to give back. And it just shows you that at the end of the day, during this time, how many people, and whether it was monetary, whether it was in kind, whether it was supporting hospitals with trying to get them masks when we couldn't get masks, whatever the scenario was, there was just so much outpouring. There was so much good. And that's what I try to focus on because everyone was focusing on so much bad during that time. And I was trying to say like what athletes are doing, what some owners of the teams are doing, and just from different, there were student athletes in college, what they were doing, just trying to help. And it was just magnificent to see, and the varieties of ways. I'm like drawing a blank right now to think, because I did a segment every single week on this. But honestly, to me, I was just, I thought that was really amazing because it started out when I first did it. I had maybe 4 stories. By the next week, I had 14. But by week 8, I had to curate them. I had to go through 40 stories and pick my top 10 because otherwise I'd be on there forever and nobody wants to hear me for an hour. So anyway, but I just, people are so creative. And when they want to, make a difference, and that's why we say it needs to come from here, not just because you have to do it or you should do it. It needs to come from your heart. And you see the best people who work in nonprofit when they have the servant's heart and they want to give back, and the way they do it, they don't mind how many hours, they're not getting paid a ton of money, but they want to affect and change, impact people. They're passionate about the causes that they're working for. And to me, that's a beautiful place to be in when you talk about places and spaces, Desiree.
Most definitely.
It reminds me of the Mr. Rogers quote too, right? Look for the helpers. This idea that when bad things happen, that there are always people who care enough to sacrifice whatever's going on in their life to affect positive change in others. So it's a great reminder, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, Carla. And with that, our Q&A has now come to a close. So Carla and Desiree, thank you for your incredible experiences and stories. Thank you so much for talking with us tonight about mentors and the community responsibility of athletes as a part of Trey Season 3. And in advance of passing it back to LaJoy, 2 quick notes for our audience. Number 1, please stick around for just a minute because LaJoy has a few reminders in advance of finalizing the event. And number 2, we're getting ready to launch a quick poll right now. Please complete that before you leave. Finally, on behalf of every single one of our Trey athletes, coaches, and families, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Carla and Desiree. You two are truly inspirational. Take us home, LaJoy.
Echoing Brian's sentiments, thank you to both of you for sharing your amazing insights and your stories and your experiences, and most of all for just being amazing role models, right? So also, Brian, great job to you as well. So thank you for hosting us tonight. The survey is up, so make sure you take that before you leave. A few quick reminders. We have another Fireside Chat coming up next week. Make sure you register that. Our next Fireside Chat will be applying leadership skills through sport. We'll drop a link in the chat for you to register. Other great events are coming up this week as well. We have 2 job shadows. We'll be doing some publicizing of those events on social media. Speaking of which, our pizza party winner is yet to be announced. So make sure you're engaging with us on Instagram and Twitter. You can tag us at Trey Athletes, and the lucky team will be announced at our end of year party. Check us out on Instagram for more details about that. Coaches, if you have athletes who didn't miss this amazing conversation with Desiree and Carla, don't worry. This will be live on our YouTube channel, and we'll also post a reminder about that. Speaking of that, for coaches, another announcement for you guys, make sure that you're hosting your debrief sessions as soon as possible. And also make sure you're sharing those feedback surveys. We rely on those surveys to get feedback from your team so we can make sure our programming is changed and we are putting in your feedback and your responses as you're providing that to us. So thank you to everyone who's with us tonight. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Desiree. And with that, we're out. To athletes everywhere. Good night.
Thank y'all.